welcome to part 3 of my Visual Basic game programming tutorial series. Today we will be focusing on graphics and tile mapping. I just want to outline a couple of things on tile design and how I create seamless tiles and things like that. As you map it across a grid, you want it to be seamless. The one that I'm working on right here, just a simple one that I threw together, you can see that these are seamless through here, even though I should be able to take like the center tile here and paste it as many times across my form as I want without any lines. So I also created some border connectors so I can end them gracefully at the edges. Same with these mountains. I thought I'd do ones that you could probably walk over, maybe impassable ones, as well as forests and things like that. So I'll probably just be detailing how to create the seamless effect. It's pretty simple. I'm using an old version of Jask Paint Shop Pro. You can use GIMP or Photoshop or anything like that. As long as you can manipulate graphics and layers, that's really important. And also it's helpful to have a grid that you can snap to. That comes into play when you're creating your seamless tiles. It's very important. So I know that GIMP has those features. And it's free, so you can just go download that if you don't have anything to edit graphics in. The menus and stuff will probably be a bit different, but the principles are all the same. So whatever you're familiar with is what you're going to want to use. And if you're not familiar with something, then we can, familiarize ourselves with that and move on. So it's up to you. I'll go ahead and get started here. Now what I've done here is created an image that is in, it's in multiples of 32 because that's the tile size that we used. I then created my tiles individually and then pasted them in as separate layers to this grid. You'll see if I grab my mover tool, I can move these individual segments. And what I use is this grid here, and I make sure that snap to grid is on. And if your grid is too small, you're going to want to set the horizontal and vertical spacing to your tile size. So now when I grab this, it'll snap into these sections, and I can test this. I could grab like this center tile here, and if I did it properly, I could copy that layer multiple times, stuff them all in here together, and it should be seamless. There shouldn't be any gaps or anything in it. So if I turn off my grid and then zoom in here, you'll see there are no lines or spaces in there. And you want to try to keep it as random looking as possible. You can, no matter how good you are, there's always going to be a repeating pattern. So you want that to just be as visually random as you can get it. Here you can see, I've got this big thing, and it kind of goes across, but the mountains themselves look fairly consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out my changes there. And I'll show you basically how I created like a water tile, for example. And I always use it, just so you know, I use a base terrain tile. It's just a blank of whatever's going to be, if it's grass or whatever. And then I just copy that, paste it as a new image, and then I use that as my manipulation, platform there. So that way, when you snap them together, they're sort of seamless. Now you may want varying tile colors, for dirt and stuff like that. That's up to you, however you'd like to do that. I'm no graphics professional, so let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to use this new image, and I'm going to split this grid. I know it's a 32 by 32 tile, so I'm going to split that in half. By default, my grid is not correct, so I'm going to change the properties to 1/2 of 32, which is 16. And I'm going to go ahead and turn off the grid while I work on it for now. I'm going to grab like a blue color. maybe a little lighter than that. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this tile and show you how I create a seamless water tile. It's very important to remember that you don't want to use fuzzy brushes or anything with a soft edge is really not good for making tiles. You want hard edges with 100% opacity, and you want to use as few colors as you can. Some of the nicest games out there for like the Super Nintendo, Secret of Mana, Secret of Evermore, things like that, even though the graphics are really nice, they have a surprisingly low color depth. Some of those trees and things that they have, even though they're really detailed, will have only between like 7 and 14 colors in the entire image. So it's really surprising what you can do with very little. I'm going to go ahead and just grab a blue brush here that's a little darker than my main. And let's see, I want to just get my regular paint brush there. And I'm going to bump this down to 1, set the hardness to 100 and the opacity to 100, so I get solid blocks, 1 pixel blocks. If you have fuzzy edges and you go to scale your game screen up or anything like that, it's going to be really fuzzy and weird. And if you've ever played like a Nintendo game or something, it didn't matter how big your screen was, they scaled up pretty nicely and always had pretty crisp edges and stuff, and that's because they use solid blocks, and that's what you're going to want to do here. Generally the edges of those, if your edges are fuzzy, they're harder to join together and create a seamless tile with. So anyway, I'm going to start drawing here. I'm just going to do some random, loops and circles and things like that, like you'd see in a typical water tile for a game. I'll just kind of try to randomize it as well as I can here. It's hard to get it perfectly, really random. The more random, the better. So, I'm going to get rid of that little extra spot. And grab that color again. Finish drawing that. Okay. Now, so I've created a water tile here. So let's go ahead and see how that would look tiled out. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it into my tile palette, or your tile set, as a new layer. I'm going to turn my grid on temporarily and snap it in there. And I'm going to just paste it a few more times next to itself to see how its edges line up. And I predict that it probably won't be very nice. See, now if you look there closely, you'll see all kinds of broken edges and stuff, and it's all the outside boundaries of each tile. So what we're going to do is bring all those boundaries together into the center. While using the center, the center is already connected and lined up, so we'll take the center, stick it on the outside, take the outside and stick it in the center. You'll see what I mean here in a second. I'm going to go back to my image here. I'm going to turn my I've already got it set to half my image size, so I'm going to turn that grid on, and I'm going to take a copy of the main layer here. I'm going to paste it into the same image as a new layer, so you can't actually see it, but I actually put another one in here. And then I'm going to take each corner and move it to the opposite corner. Okay, that takes all the outside edges and puts them in the center, so we should be able to see our broken line. So I'm going to take the bottom left, move it to the top right. I'm going to paste another layer, take the top right, move it to the bottom left, and repeat this, top left to bottom right to top left. Okay, and then I'm going to take all those layers, merge them into one flat image, so there are no more layers here. And then I'll turn my grid off, and it looks exactly as it did over here when we tested it. Only now all the outside edges line up perfectly, but which allows us to fix the inside. So I can take this, move that down there, and just clean up these gaps and stuff. Now it's important to remember that we cannot modify these edges, because if we change the outside edge, that is going to create new seams that weren't there before, because those are already aligned perfectly. So keep that in mind as you change your graphics here. Alright, so now I should be able to take this new tile and copy it, turn my grid back on. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those other tiles that I created over here, and you will see. I will paste in the new one a few times to see what it would look like in a game world. Okay, now I'm going to turn my grid off. If we did it right, we should have no visible edges. So I'm going to zoom that up for you so you can see it. Check that out. Now it could probably be a little more random, you know, and I'm going to want to put a little more detail, maybe some lighter water and stuff, and if you want to get real fancy you can always animate your water like they do in some of the older games. But we have successfully created a tile, and it will replicate indefinitely so long as we want it to. Now you're going to also want to do what I did up here, where you create some border tiles, because you know the tiles, you don't want it to go straight up to the land and cut off, or you create a seam against the grass or something. Older games like Dragon Warrior and stuff, they did that anyway. It didn't really matter to them, and they were still fun games. But if you're kind of a stickler for perfection, you know, you're going to want to do something like that. Maybe create some border tiles that you can end it gracefully with. It just makes a nicer landscape. It's really up to you. So the next step will be actually taking our tile map, and I'm going to be using this one, and I'll include it in the source code so you can play with it. But we're going to actually put this in our game environment and draw on some of these tiles and stuff. It'll be fun. So, alright, I will hop to that here in a moment. Regarding the graphics also, there's one thing that I forgot to mention, and that is that when you save your final tile set, you want to save it in an uncompressed image format. You do not want to use something like the JPEG, JPG format. What'll happen is that you'll get artifacts and stuff which will actually destroy your tile set, especially where sprites are concerned, because you're going to be using transparent masks and stuff on those. And if there's any color changes to those, which JPEG does do, it will destroy them, and those artifacts will show up in your game. So just something to keep in mind. Save is like a Windows bitmap or a BMP image, something like that. I've never tried a PNG file. I'm not sure if that would work. It'd probably be a little bit smaller file size, but you can try different things, but definitely shy away from JPEGs and the like. There's one other thing we're going to want to do though, and that is to give our picture box a name. I could call it PB for picture box GFX. And so what we'll do is we'll reference this form, this object, and then its image property when we create our BMP file. So I'm going to go back here. To get started, we're going to have to use a different tile mapping scheme here. So instead of just having a single rectangle that we draw like we have in the last couple of demos, we're actually going to need a source rectangle and a destination rectangle. And what that's going to do is actually create like a stamp pad effect, where we grab off of this image a selected square or region and then paste it onto this image. That's exactly how the tile mapping works, and it's going to go out in the X and Y coordinates. So we're going to have to change this to srect, and that's going to create a bunch of errors everywhere we've used this, but we'll fix those. And then we'll dim direct as rectangle. And we're also going to need another bitmap here, and This one is going to be, instead of just the back buffer, it's going to be the region that we select on the other picture. So it's going to be a blank bitmap or picture file, and we're going to take a snapshot of a section of that thing and store it to this new one. So we could just call this BMP tile as bitmap. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and reference this picture box and tie that to our BMP tile. So we'll come down here in our graphics objects initialization, and we'll say BMP tile, oops, equals a new bitmap. And instead of using a file name, what we're going to do is reference gfx dot picturebox gfx dot image. Now what we can do is create a new sub to grab whichever chunk of this we want based upon the map value, or the whatever this map value is at any specific coordinates. It can store a different integer, so based on that integer we're going to want to pick a different tile. Let's go ahead and correct all these old rectangle values. I'm just going to change that to srect. And I think we're going to actually be using our destination rectangles for this, but I'm probably going to end up chopping most of this stuff out because we're not going to be drawing just a grid anymore. So I'm just going to actually get rid of that. Get rid of that. And you know what? I'm going to get rid of that too. So now we have an empty loop, and what we're going to do is create a new sub to call in this loop to dynamically grab the tiles that we specifically choose. So let's go ahead and create that. I'm probably going to want to go down to the bottom. You might want to store these functions and subs in another module. For the sake of the demonstration, I'm just going to go ahead and add it down here. And I'm going to do something like private sub get source rectangle. And I'm going to use a by-val x as integer. So I'm going to pass it my x coordinate, and I'm going to pass it my y coordinate. And also the width and height. Now we can just use we'll probably just pass it the tile size. This makes it flexible in the future if we ever want to change our tile size or something. We don't have to tear through all of our code. So I'm just going to do w as an integer and height, oops, by val h for height as an integer as well. Okay, and what we're going to have to do is check the value of our map coordinate to find out what integer is stored there, and then use that integer to select a specific source rectangle from that image, from that picture box that we use. So we'll say case 0, whoops, help if I did a select case here, select case, and then I want to use my map value for the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and the 0z index. We always want to use the 0z index for our tiles. So and we'll say, so I'm kind of getting below the screen here, I hope I didn't chop all that off. We'll say case 0, I'll call this grass, we'll do a case 1, we'll call it tree case 2, and this is really an oversimplification. We're probably going to have a ton of these based on all the different tile types we have, but I'm just going to be using a few of them here for the sake of time and simplicity. We'll just do a mountain tile. Okay, so I'll start with the grass, and I'll say anywhere that map value is 0, my source rectangle is going to be a new rectangle. And now we have to choose the coordinates of the actual tile. So to get our tile location, essentially what we're going to have to do is just, calculate out how many tiles, both on the X and the Y, or how many pixels, sorry, your tile is. So what we'll do is say this is one tile here that's 0, 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, and then say I want to go down on the Y, 0, 1, 2, let's see, yeah, it's actually 2, 3, 4, okay, so I've got 5 by 4, so I'd take 5 times 32 and 4 times 32 to get my coordinates for that tile. I'll show you what I mean here. For the first tile, that one's easy. I just want to use this one, so I'm going to go X is 0 times 32, 1 times 32. So 32, and then on the Y, it'll just be 0 times 32, so 0. So my coordinate will be 32 and 0. So 32 on the X, 0 on the Y, and of course our tile size. For our trees, going to be, what is that, over 32, say I want to grab this tree right here. So that'll be 0, 32, and let's see, for the Y that's going to be 0, 32, 64, 90, and 128. Did I do that right? So essentially 32 by 128. So I'll say srect equals a new rectangle, 32, 128 is the coordinates of that particular tile. Tile size and tile size. And now for a mountain tile. I'm just going to grab that one that I was talking about. So that was essentially, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 32, which should be 160, and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 times 32 would be 128, so 160 by 128. srect equals new rectangle. That can get tedious, but really only have to do it once, so once your code's set, you're good to go. In your graphics program, you could also just hover your mouse over each coordinate to find the x, y coordinates of that. I think most of those graphics programs will actually show your mouse position. So with that, all we should have to do is go up to our form load. We had already cleared this out, so sorry, not our form load, but our draw graphics routine, and we're drawing an empty grid here. So let's get source rectangle, and we're going to use our map x, because remember we're in logical space here. We're checking each map value, not the x, y value. So we're going to do that plus the x value, because the x value is only going to go from 0 to 19, and this will take that starting square on our form and move out from there on the xy. So we'll do map y logical plus literal, and we're going to do it as our tile size. Tile size, sorry, sloppy typing as usual. And the next thing we do is set our destination rectangle, where we want to draw it. Well, we want to draw it back to our screen, right? To our form. So that's where this is going to be. And we'll say the destination rectangle equals a new rectangle. And the coordinates of this are going to be our physical coordinates, our literal coordinates, 0 to 19. So we'll say x times tile size. So it's going to start at 0 and go up to 32 and then go to the next one. And then y times tile size. Same thing. And then each tile is going to be 32 by 32, our tile size. So that's pretty simple. The last step before we can actually test this would be to draw the image. So we've taken our stamp pad and now we want to draw it. So we're going to draw image BMP tile, but only the section we want to the location we want. So we're going to draw it to our destination rectangle from our source rectangle, whichever one was specified, and get source rectangle. And for the graphics unit, oops, sorry, we will use graphics unit pixel. So it's going to draw by pixels. Now, we haven't actually populated any of these coordinates from 0 to 100 and 0 to 100. So those are all going to default to a 0 value. So if this works properly, what we should essentially see is our default value here, our default block, is going to draw grass. So let's go ahead and just run it and see what happens. And there you have it. Big grassy plain. So what we're going to need to do next is throw in a couple of our other values, our 1 and our 2, see if we can get trees or mountains to pop up here. So let's just close that out, and we'll go up to our form load, and let's see, we were starting on map X was 20 and map Y was 20, so that's going to be our topmost tile. So I'm going to go out to something like 21 and 22 and just randomly drop in a tile there. Let's see, map 21 equals, whoops, forgot my Z index, that's going to be 0, equals 1, and see, normally you're going to be loading all these values. You're going to populate the entire map with values from a file or something that stores your map data. I'll go ahead and do 22, so it'll be the next corner tile down. Okay. We'll set this one to 2. So one should be a tree and one should be a mountain. Let's just test that. Hit start, and there she is. 21, you can look over on the right there, our mouse coordinates. 22. So even if if we had all these populated, the entire map, the only ones that are ever going to draw, and this will keep our performance good, the only ones that will ever draw are the ones that are in this range in our logical space. Okay, so with that, you know, the sky's the limit. And I'm not sure what I can't remember what the next video. So in the next video, I will probably be covering using the masking for a character and character movement, things like that. You know, essentially how to draw the sprite with transparency and move them around the screen. And in these tutorials, I'll be sticking with my traditional RPG approach, and that the character will probably stay centered in the screen, and what we'll actually do is move the map. As far as the map editor feature goes, you know how we discussed being able to draw on it and whatnot. Oh, look at that! Because we changed those values, we could actually paint. So it is like a map editor still. Kind of cool. You can also check and see how well these tile. Boy, I hadn't even thought of that. All that code is still in there. So anyway, movement. That's what we'll be doing in the next video. So we'll be moving the map, scrolling it, and with the tile editor, we could try something like, you know, maybe moving. If you move your mouse close to the edge, it will automatically scroll in that direction. That would be a really wonderful feature for a map editor. So you wouldn't have to actually tab around or, you know, move the map manually. It would just sort of track with your mouse. All kinds of cool ideas that you could implement. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful, and you know, feel free to leave comments, feedback. You know, I know there's a lot of things I could probably do better. I'm not very good at this, but I, you know, really appreciate the feedback. I like hearing what you guys have, you know, have to ask, or what you're thinking about, or what you think of the videos. So keep in touch, and I'll catch you on the next run. Thanks again. Bye bye.